The movie starts with a rocket launch into space, carrying a spacecraft that contains a message about humans, a picture of the human form and a map showing Earth's location in the galaxy. The goal of this mission is to try to communicate with alien life on other planets. At the same time, Neil, a famous author, is being honored at a party for the huge success of his latest book. His neighbor Catherine introduces him and interviews him about the book, but the party gets ruined by a sudden dog attack. Suddenly, Neil wakes up. Turns out it was all just a dream. Then the doorbell rings. His other neighbor is at the door, complaining about the noise from his dog and threatening to call the police. Neil doesn't really care. He takes the dog out for a walk and runs into Catherine. He tells her about the dream. It's clear he likes her, but he doesn't know how to express his feelings. Meanwhile, the spacecraft reaches a group of aliens. They read Earth's message and mock it, adding it to a collection of similar messages from other planets. After watching how humans behave, one alien decides Earth should be destroyed. But another one reminds him that, according to Galactic Council rules, they must first test a representative of the planet. So they decide to randomly select one human and give them unlimited power for 10 days. Anything they wish for will come true. If they use the power for good, Earth will be spared. If they use it for evil, Earth will be destroyed. Neil is the one they choose. On his way to school, Neil has a bike accident. That's when the aliens send a beam of light to give him the power. Meanwhile, Catherine is at a cafe with her friend Rosie, talking about how her boss harasses her and how her ex-boyfriend Grant won't leave her alone. She says she feels like Neil is a nice guy, but finds his behavior a bit odd. Neil arrives late to school and gets scolded by the principal. Then he walks into his class and finds the students acting up and not paying attention. He decides to just leave them and walk out until the class is over. During break, he runs into his friend Ray, who has a crush on their classmate Dorsey, though she's clearly not interested in him. Ray asks Neil what he would wish for if he could have anything, and Neil sarcastically says he wishes aliens would destroy the classroom. Suddenly, there's an explosion at the school. The classroom actually gets destroyed. Neil goes home in shock and hears on the news that 38 people died. He starts to wonder if his wish was responsible. He decides to test it again and wishes that the floor of his apartment would be cleaned of his dog's mess. And it works. He freaks out and runs to the kitchen for a drink, but drops the bottle. He wishes the alcohol would go back into the bottle, and it does, but now it's dirty from the sink. So he wishes it would be replaced with a clean bottle. Suddenly, the bottle moves on its own and leaves the house to go find a replacement. Neil and the dog chase after the bottle but fail to catch it. The bottle ends up reaching the liquor store. But the shop is closed, so the bottle flies through the front door and smashes the glass, setting off the alarm. Neil tries to run before getting caught, but the police chase him until he falls. Right before they catch him, he wishes he was at home eating with his dog, and suddenly, he disappears and finds himself at home. That's when Neil realizes something strange has happened. Whatever he wishes for comes true. He figures the explosion in the classroom caused it. So he wishes for all the people who died to come back to life. And just like that, they all return, causing chaos in the streets. Neil realizes that was a bad wish. So he changes it, and wishes the school explosion never happened. Suddenly, time rewinds to before the explosion. He thinks it was all just a dream. Back in class, the students are still being loud and unruly, so he wishes they'd be quiet and eager to learn. And in a flash, the whole room goes silent and everyone's reading. After class, Neil meets with the principal and wishes he would treat him nicely. The principal ends up thanking him warmly. Neil is thrilled that his wishes come true so easily. He sees his friend Ray trying to talk to Daisy, who brushes him off. Neil wishes Daisy would love Ray. And suddenly, Daisy tells Ray she worships the ground he walks on. Later, after work, Neil wishes he was president of the United States. A presidential car suddenly pulls up and rushes him away because there's a threat on his life. He freaks out and wishes to go back to being a normal person, and wakes up safe in his home. Then he wishes to see his neighbor Catherine, and suddenly, the floor disappears and he sees her through it. Catherine screams in shock, so he wishes not to see anything, and goes blind. He quickly changes his wish, asking for everything to go back to normal and for Catherine to forget what happened. The next day at work, he sees Daisy can't keep her hands off Ray. Neil tells Ray about his superpower, but Ray doesn't believe him, so Neil makes the skeleton start talking. Ray is still skeptical, so Neil makes the skeleton jump out the window, right as the principal is walking by, and it lands on him. The principal yells at Ray but thanks Neil for his hard work and gives him the day off. That's when Ray finally realizes something weird is definitely going on. Meanwhile, Catherine is leaving work when Grant, the guy she's been trying to break up with, shows up. He tries to win her back by proposing and handing her the key to a new apartment, but she refuses. That night, Catherine tells her friend Rosie everything, and Rosie suggests she ask Neil if he really loves her, since he clearly seems interested. At the same time, Neil wishes that Catherine would fall madly in love with him, but the alien's device glitches, and the wish doesn't work. Catherine shows up and asks Neil if he really loves her. He admits he does, deeply, and they end up spending the night together. Later, the alien device gets fixed, and a beam hits Neil to restore his powers. The next day, Neil wakes up super happy, thinking Catherine fell in love with him because of his wish. He finds a note from her saying she had to leave early for work. Neil wishes for a fancy breakfast, and notices his dog, Dennis, making a lot of noise. So, he suddenly gets the idea to make the dog talk like a human so he can understand him, and it actually works. They start having a full-on conversation. The doorbell rings. Neil tells Dennis to stay in the kitchen and not say a word. When he opens the door, it's Catherine, and she looks happy about what happened between them. She tells him she's liked him for a long time. But suddenly, she hears a voice from the kitchen. It's Dennis, sounding like a human, saying he loves Neil. Catherine totally misunderstands and thinks Neil is into men. She assumes that's why he never made a move on her and walks away, shocked. Neil runs after her and sees her getting on a bus. He wishes to be with her and suddenly ends up on top of the bus. Then he adjusts the wish and ends up inside the engine. Finally, he wishes to be with the passengers, but by that time, Catherine has already gotten off, so he follows her. He tries to explain what happened, but she doesn't want to hear it and leaves him. Later, Catherine gets back to her apartment and is shocked to find Grant waiting for her. She tries to kick him out and gets angry. Her neighbors hear the noise, including Neil, who comes to help her. He suggests she come stay at his place until Grant leaves, and she agrees. At Neil's place, he tells her everything that's been happening, and that he can actually make anything come true. To prove it, he wishes for her to get a promotion and a big office. But she doesn't believe him. While they're talking, Grant breaks in through the window with a gun and threatens Neil. Neil wishes for the gun to fall, and it does. They start fighting. Catherine throws the gun out the window and calls them both crazy before walking out. Neil starts punishing Grant with weird wishes, hurting his hand, hanging him from the ceiling, and sticking his head into a plant pot. Then he threatens him to stay away from Catherine or he'll kill him. But just then, Dennis talks to Neil and distracts him. Grant takes advantage of the moment, knocks Neil out, and ties him up. When Neil wakes up, he's tied up and Grant is forcing him to make wishes. Grant demands tons of gold bars. Meanwhile, at work, Catherine is shocked to find out she actually got promoted and now has a big office. She realizes Neil was telling the truth and rushes to find him. She gets to his place and finds the door open and a vase broken. She looks around and finds Ray hiding in the closet, trying to escape Dorsey, who keeps chasing him everywhere. Ray tells her Neil granted him a wish, but now he wants to undo it and can't find Neil. Catherine figures out that Grant kidnapped Neil and is probably holding him in the apartment he had prepared for her. She grabs Ray and the key, and they go to Grant's place to rescue Neil. At Grant's apartment, he's still forcing Neil to grant wishes. Catherine bursts in to stop him, but Grant orders Neil to make Catherine fall madly in love with him. Neil grants the wish, but uses the moment to free himself and cancels all of Grant's wishes. He frees Dennis and turns Grant into a little dog. Ray asks Neil to turn Dorsey back to normal, and Neil does. Then they all leave, and Neil is left alone. The next day, he goes to see Catherine to apologize, but she refuses to accept it. She tells him he's selfish, and that she can't even tell if her feelings were real or just because of one of his wishes. She says she doesn't want to see him again. Neil goes home, feeling guilty. That's when he realizes he has the power to do something truly good for the world, but instead, he's just been using it for himself. So he decides to make real change. He wishes for an end to world hunger, a solution for homelessness, an end to all wars, and to stop global warming on the planet. After that, Neil watches the news to see what's happened to the world after his wishes. But he's shocked to find out that while world hunger has been solved, China is now suffering from extreme obesity. People are literally dying from overeating. And even though homelessness is gone, there's no empty space left on Earth because every single area has been turned into housing. As for his wish to end all wars, Neil finds out that wars did break out, but for no clear reason. Even worse, the planet is now turning into a block of ice. That's when Neil realizes all his wishes were a disaster, and his decisions have basically destroyed the world. So, he decides to undo every single wish he made. After that, he goes to the river to end his life and jumps in, but his dog jumps in after him, and Neil rushes to save him. In the end, he fails, even at trying to die. At that exact moment, the 10-day deadline set by the aliens is up. They decide Neil wasn't able to do anything good with his powers, so they make the call to destroy Earth. In the garden by the river, the dog suggests that Neil give up his powers and hand them over to him. Strangely, Neil agrees, and actually transfers the powers to the dog. But after getting them, the dog says the powers aren't a blessing, they've only made him miserable and sad. So he wishes for the source of the power to be destroyed completely. And it works. The laser the aliens were going to use to destroy Earth bounces back and wipes them out instead. Then, time resets to the exact day before Neil got the powers. But he still remembers everything. He runs to Catherine and asks her out to dinner. She agrees, and he tells her how he feels. That's when Neil realizes he's finally gotten his real wish. As for the dog, he wishes that Grant stays a dog forever, so they can stay best friends for life. And that's where the movie ends. If you liked the summary, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Also, tell us what you thought of the movie, and if you had those powers, what would you wish for?